She sat on the cold, broken ground with her legs pulled close to her chest, her small body shaking even though the air around her was warm. Smoke drifted slowly through the ruined valley, carrying the smell of fire, metal, and death. The battle had ended hours ago, but the land still felt angry, as if it remembered every scream that had been torn from it. Beside the girl lay her mother, the woman's tall alien. Body was still and quiet, her blue skin covered with dust and dark stains where energy fire had struck. One long arm stretched toward the child, fingers frozen just inches away, as if she had tried one last time to protect her daughter, but she had failed. The girl stared at her mother's face. She had already touched her cheek, already shaken her shoulders, already whispered her name again and again until her voice broke. She knew now what the stillness meant. Her people were taught young what death looked like. It was the moment warmth left the body. It was the moment the world became silent forever. Her name was Mara. She was too young to understand war, but old enough to understand loss. Around her, the remains of her village lay scattered. Broken homes, burned supplies, fallen bodies of neighbors and friends. This place had once been filled with soft lights and gentle voices. Now it was nothing more than a grave under an open sky. Mara's tears had dried long ago, leaving pale lines on her cheeks. Crying took energy, and energy was something she needed to save. Her mother had taught her that too. If you are hurt, if you are lost, her mother once said, holding her close, stay where you are. Do not run. Someone kind may come. Mara held on to those words now. She stayed still. The sky above slowly changed color as the long day faded. Red clouds drifted like wounds across the horizon. Distant thunder echoed, though there were no storms, only ships moving far away, leaving destruction behind. Mara hugged herself tighter. She was cold now. Her stomach hurt with hunger, but she did not move. Her feet ached from sitting on the sharp ground, but she did not stand. Every sound made her heart jump. Every shadow made her breath catch. She was afraid, not just of death, but of being alone. Time passed in a strange way. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like nothing. The world seemed empty, as if it had forgotten her. Then she heard footsteps. They were heavy, slow, careful. Mara's head lifted slightly. Her wide, dark eyes followed the sound as it grew closer. Each step made the ground crunch beneath armored boots. Humans. She knew what they looked like. She had seen them from far away before the attack. Tall figures wrapped in armor, faces hidden behind cold masks. Everyone said they were dangerous. Everyone said they were the enemy. Mara did not run. She did not have the strength. A shadow fell across her and her mother's body. The human stood there, holding a weapon that looked far too large. His armor was scratched and burned. Dust covered him from head to toe. He looked tired. And something else too. Still. Very still. Mara slowly raised her eyes to meet the dark glass of his helmet. She waited for pain, for fire, for the end, but nothing happened. The human did not raise his weapon. He did not speak. He simply stared at the small, alien child sitting beside her dead mother. Alone in a ruined world. Something inside him changed. Mara felt it before she saw it. The tension in the air shifted. The fear did not disappear, but it softened. Just a little. The human lowered his gun, and for the first time since the battle ended, Mara felt something she thought was gone forever, a fragile, trembling spark of hope. The human soldier froze. He had walked through battlefields before, seen death up close, smelled it in the air, and heard it in the screams of both humans and aliens alike. He had learned to move quickly, to stay focused, to avoid being stopped by anything. Stopping meant danger, meant exposure. Stopping meant dying. But something in the small alien girl made him pause. And that pause almost felt wrong, like the world itself was warning him, yet also urging him forward. She was alive, Her blue skin looked dim in the dust, her large eyes fixed on him. She did not move, not even when the wind carried ash across her face. Her hair, long and silver, stuck to her cheeks and shoulders. Her body trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from shock, grief, and fear. He lowered his weapon slowly, careful not to make a sudden movement. His name was Evan, a human soldier sent to secure the area, to take what was left of this world. He had no orders to help anyone. Civilians, especially alien ones, were not his responsibility. And yet, looking at her, his chest tightened in a way he could not explain. She flinched as he crouched down. Tiny hands clutched her knees tighter, almost as if trying to squeeze herself into invisibility. Evan lifted his visor slowly so she could see his face. Human, tired, dirty, not angry, not threatening. "I won't hurt you," he said, voice low, gentle, though he knew she could not understand him. The girl blinked slowly. She had heard words before, but she had never understood a human voice spoken softly like this, like it carried warmth rather than command. Her body remained tense. Her mother was gone, and the world felt like it had forgotten her. No human or alien had come to help before. Why should this one be any different? He reached into his pack and pulled out a small container of water. He set it on the ground between them, careful to make no sudden movements. The girl hesitated. Her eyes, wide and cautious, followed every motion. She finally reached for it with both hands. Slowly, carefully, she drank. A small sigh escaped her lips. It was almost too quiet to hear, but Evan caught it. Something shifted inside him. He had not expected relief, not hope, not anything. And yet, seeing her survive, even for this small moment, changed something in him. Then the distant sounds of the battlefield returned. Low rumbles, far-off explosions, and the metallic hum of engines. The valley still held danger, though the main fight had moved on. Evan glanced around. Drones might be near. Enemy patrols could come back any minute. He looked down at her again. She was too small to survive alone in this world. Too small to protect herself. She had no one. Evan made a choice, one that went against every rule he had been taught. He draped his cloak around her trembling shoulders. It smelled like him, like earth, sweat, and armor. The fabric was heavy, but the girl accepted it, her small arms clutching it, as if it were the only comfort left in the universe. He lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than she should have been, but her weight was enough to remind him that she was alive, that she mattered. The sky above erupted in a flash of distant fire. Shards of energy hit the ground nearby, sending sparks and dust into the air. Evan stumbled but did not fall. He held her tighter. "I've got you," he whispered, though he did not know if she understood the words. "I won't let anything happen to you." She pressed her face against his chest, hiding from the world. Her tears had returned, silent and warm, soaking his uniform. But this time, she did not feel completely alone. Evan ran through jagged rocks and broken buildings. He moved with determination. Every step was dangerous. Every sound could mean death. But he carried her forward, propelled by something stronger than orders or rules, something deeper than war. In that moment, both human and alien were the same. Both were fighting for life. Both were fragile. Both were scared, but together. They were stronger. And for the first time since the battle, Mara believed she might survive, because a human had stopped, because a human had chosen her. And for a child who had nothing left. That was everything. The valley was not safe. Evan could feel it in every step. The ground shook beneath him as distant blasts echoed from the battlefield. Smoke twisted through the air, carrying the scent of burning metal and flesh. Small fires burned along the edges of broken buildings. The war had moved on, but danger always lingered, waiting for those who stayed behind. Mara, small and fragile in his arms, pressed closer. Shivering despite the heavy cloak around her shoulders, Her hands were tiny against his chest, holding onto him as if she feared he might vanish like her mother had. Her silver hair stuck to her damp cheeks. Her large, dark eyes, wide with fear, followed every movement he made. Each shadow seemed alive, and each sound felt like it could be the end. Evan's heart tightened. He had survived this war by following orders, staying alert, and keeping his distance from anything soft or fragile. But Mara was neither an enemy nor a target. She was a child, a small being who had already lost everything. And he could not leave her behind. He slowed his pace near a ruined building, its walls blackened and cracked, but standing just enough to provide cover. Inside, the air smelled of ash and decay. Evan lowered her carefully, setting her down on the cold floor. She sank to her knees, clutching the cloak tightly around her. Her breathing was shallow, but she was alive, and for the first time since the battle, she was not alone. Evan knelt beside her. "We have to rest," he said quietly. "Just for a moment." She did not speak. She only pressed her forehead against his shoulder, trembling. He reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. She flinched, then relaxed slightly. That tiny gesture, a human hand on her skin, warm and steady, felt like a lifeline. Hours passed. The valley remained eerily silent, except for distant echoes of fighting. Mara ate small bites from the ration pack he offered, learning quickly how to chew without choking, how to sip water carefully. She mimicked his movements, copying the way he moved silently, the way he checked corners before stepping. Evan watched her closely. She was fragile, yes, but smart. Brave in a way that surprised him. At one point, Mara touched the pendant around her neck, her mother's last gift. It glowed faintly in the dim light. Evan noticed and asked softly, "What is that?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Family." The word, though alien in sound, carried the weight of grief and hope. He nodded, understanding more than she could know. He had lost people too, friends and soldiers, brothers in arms. And yet, for Mara, all hope had not vanished. Suddenly, the distant hum of engines grew louder. Enemy patrols, drones. The war was not done with them yet. Evan rose carefully, placing himself between Mara and the door. She looked up at him, eyes wide. Fear and trust mingled in her gaze. "I've got you," he said again. She nodded slightly, gripping his arm. The first blast hit near the building, shaking the floor beneath them. Dust fell from the ceiling. Mara screamed, a small raw sound that tore through Evan's chest. He wrapped his arms around her, shielding her as best he could. Another blast. The walls rattled. The world felt like it was closing in, pressing on them from all sides. He whispered constantly, trying to keep her calm. "It's okay, I'm here. Nothing's going to happen, I promise." Step by step, he led her out into the shadows. Every movement was calculated. Every corner was checked. Every second counted. Mara's fingers dug into his cloak, and he could feel her heartbeat against his own. They were tethered together in a world that had tried to tear her apart. By the time they reached the edge of the valley, the sun had begun to set, painting the sky in fiery orange and red. Smoke hung in the air like a veil, but the danger seemed to recede slightly with the distance. Mara leaned against him, exhausted but alive. Evan looked down at her, her small form pressed against his chest, and felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. The war was not over. The world was still broken. But for now, they had survived together. And in that moment, amid fear and fire, Mara finally dared to believe that, maybe, she was not alone anymore, because someone had chosen to protect her, because someone had refused to let her go. The shelter was small, cracked and barely standing, but it was enough. Evan set Mara down gently, making sure she was seated safely. She shivered, pressing the heavy cloak around her shoulders, and looked up at him with eyes full of questions. Her face was streaked with ash and tears, but there was something else there, too cautious hope. Evan leaned against the wall, trying to catch his breath. His leg throbbed where a shard of debris had cut him during their escape, but he ignored it. Mara needed him, and he would not falter. Hours passed in silence. The war had moved away from the valley, but danger still lingered. Every creak of the old building made Mara flinch. Every shadow seemed alive. Evan watched her, his chest tight with worry. She was too young, too fragile, too alone in a world that had already taken so much from her. Finally Mara spoke, her small voice almost a whisper. "Hungry?" Evan smiled faintly. "I've got some food." "It's not much, but it will help." He handed her a small pack of rations. She opened it slowly, as if afraid it might vanish. She ate carefully, one small bite at a time, while he watched, silently counting the seconds between each nervous chew. After she had eaten, she touched the pendant around her neck, the one her mother had given her. Evan noticed the way she traced the symbol with her tiny fingers, eyes distant and sad. "What does it mean?" he asked softly. "Family." "Promise," Mara said. Her voice was small, broken, but determined. She looked at him then, her eyes searching. Evan nodded. He understood. Family was not only those who were alive. It was also the love and care that remained, even after loss. And he realized with a strange certainty that she had just made him part of her family. A low hum reached them through the shelter walls, patrols, drones. The war was not done. Evan rose carefully, keeping himself between Mara and the door. She flinched, gripping his arm, trembling. "They'll come this way," he whispered. "But I won't let anything happen to you." Mara's fingers dug into his sleeve, and he could feel her heartbeat racing against his own. In that instant, Evan understood what he had to do. Command had given him orders. He should report, leave, continue the mission. Aliens, especially civilians, were not his responsibility. But no order could force him to abandon her. He pulled his radio from his pack. Static hissed through it. His commander's voice came through, cold and firm. "Soldier, report your position." "Area secure." Evan looked at Mara, sitting small and fragile, her eyes wide and trusting. He pressed the radio button but said nothing. His fingers trembled slightly as he set the device down. He had made his choice. "We're not leaving," he said quietly. More to himself than to her. Mara tilted her head, unsure of what he meant. But she understood enough. The human would not leave her. He would protect her. The hours stretched into night. Evan patched up his own injuries first, then tended to hers. Her cuts and scrapes were small, but the burns from the blast were worse. He worked carefully, using what little medical supplies he had. Mara flinched at first but relaxed under his careful touch. "I won't hurt you," he said softly, and for the first time, she believed it. Outside, the night was filled with distant sounds of war. Explosions, engines, and the faint hum of drones reminded them both that danger was still very near. But inside the shelter, a fragile peace settled between them. Evan finally sat back, exhausted. Mara curled beside him, resting her head against his chest. He could feel her small, rapid heartbeat, her steady breaths, and he knew that she trusted him completely. He had no orders to protect her. No mission required him to care for an alien child. And yet, he would not abandon her, because some choices were not made for orders or rules. Some choices were made for Hope. And Evan had chosen Hope. For Mara, for life, for the chance that a single human could still be kind in a world that had lost its way. The days that followed were slow, quiet, and strange. Evan and Mara moved carefully through the ruined lands, traveling mostly at night to avoid patrols and drones. The world outside still smelled of smoke and metal, but Mara learned to follow him, copying his careful steps and silent movements. Every time he paused to check a shadow or a sound, she paused too, watching and learning. Food was scarce, but they shared what little they had. Evan taught her how to ration small bites, how to sip water without spilling, and how to hide herself in the shadows when danger passed nearby. She was quick to learn, and even in her small, fragile body, there was a fierce intelligence that surprised him. One night, under a sky dusted with stars, Mara spoke. "Mara," she said softly, her small voice trembling. "My name?" Evan guessed, pointing to himself. "Evan," she repeated it carefully. "Evan." The way she said his name made it sound like a small promise, a bond forming between them. He smiled faintly, a little tired, a little relieved. Mara showed him the pendant she always wore. It was carved from silver and glimmered faintly in the starlight. "Mother," she whispered, touching it with delicate fingers. "Family." Evan nodded, understanding more than her words could tell. He had lost friends, comrades, even family, but the grief she carried was heavier. She had only her memories and a small hope that someone kind might find her. They slept in abandoned shelters, each taking turns keeping watch. Mara learned quickly to stand guard, using a broken piece of metal as a makeshift weapon. She was small, but determination made her seem taller than she really was. When Evan's exhaustion overtook him, she would place a hand on his shoulder, eyes wide and serious, reminding him that she needed him alive. Slowly, she began to talk more. Her words were halting, broken, but she shared stories of her home before the war, of her mother singing under the silver light, of the trees that had smelled sweet in the morning. Evan listened, his heart aching for all she had lost, and for the moments she had never known. Sometimes she cried quietly, missing her mother. And each time, Evan held her close, whispering softly, rocking her gently, telling her that she was safe for now. He could not promise forever, but he could promise this moment, this breath, this heartbeat. And that was enough. One night after a long trek through the darkened valley, Mara looked up at him. "Why, you helped me." Her words were small, trembling, like fragile glass. Evan paused. The question had no simple answer. He thought of orders, missions, and rules, all of which he had abandoned. He thought of hope, trust, and life. Finally he said, "Because no one should be alone, not a child, not you." Mara's eyes shone in the faint moonlight. She pressed herself closer to him, and he could feel her trust in every tiny heartbeat against his chest. They were different species apart, shapes and colors unlike any others, but grief, fear, and hope sounded the same in every language. She had lost her mother. He had lost comrades. And yet, together, they were learning to survive. Through quiet nights, long walks, and shared meals, they began to understand each other. Mara learned that Evan's hands could heal, that his voice could soothe, that his presence meant safety. Evan learned that Mara's mind was sharp, that her spirit was brave, and that even in a body so small, hope could shine bright. In the darkness, they became something like family. Not by blood or orders, but by choice, by trust, by the simple, fragile, unbreakable bond of two souls clinging to life in a world that had tried to take everything from them. And for Mara, each night beside Evan, each shared bite, each whispered word, became a proof that even after loss, even after fear, someone could choose kindness. Someone had chosen her, and that choice was stronger than any war. They had been walking for hours when the first lights appeared on the horizon. Mara clutched Evan's arm tightly, her small fingers digging into his sleeve. The soft hum of engines and the sharp gleam of searchlights told him what he already feared. Human forces had found them. Evan stopped. He crouched, putting himself between Mara and the approaching soldiers. "Stay close," he whispered. His voice was calm, but inside, his heart pounded. He knew the rules. Aliens, especially civilians, were not to be protected. And yet, he could not leave her. The soldiers approached, weapons raised. Their voices were sharp and commanding, cutting through the night. "Halt! Identify yourselves!" One shouted. Mara shrank behind Evan, her wide eyes darting between the humans. She had seen many of them before, figures in armor, faces hidden, voices hard and cold. But Evan stood firm. He would not let them see fear. "Not yet. She's a child," he said, stepping forward. "A civilian. Don't shoot." "She's an alien," the commander barked. "Step aside." Evan's chest tightened. He could feel Mara trembling behind him. He held her hand tightly, letting her grip anchor him. "She lost her mother," he said, voice rising slightly. "She's alone. If that makes her our enemy, then this war has already made us monsters." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. The soldiers looked at each other, unsure, weapons still raised. Mara pressed herself closer to Evan, her small head resting against his chest. She had never felt safer, never felt that someone truly cared. Finally, the commander lowered his weapon, sighing. "Get them medical help. They're coming with us." Evan's knees almost gave out with relief. He knelt briefly, holding Mara close, then stood, keeping her safe in his arms as the soldiers guided them toward a waiting vehicle. Mara clung to him, her trust complete. During the journey, she whispered questions. "Why? You help me?" Evan glanced down at her. She looked so small, so fragile, yet so brave. "Because no one deserves to be left alone," he said. "Not a child. Not anyone." She nodded slowly, her small hand brushing against his chest. She did not fully understand the words, but she understood the meaning. He had chosen her. He had chosen hope over rules, life over orders. At the medical camp, doctors moved quickly to help them both. Mara's burns and bruises were treated, her exhaustion eased with warmth and food. Evan sat beside her, letting her rest against him. Her small hand remained in his, a silent promise that she would survive. That night, as Mara slept, Evan looked at her and remembered his own losses, friends, comrades, and a world that often seemed cruel. But here, in this quiet moment, he realized something profound. Humanity was not proven by battles won or enemies defeated. Humanity was proven by who you refused to abandon, who you chose to protect when no one else would. Mara stirred in her sleep and muttered a small word. Van. He smiled softly. "I'm here," he whispered. For Mara, the world had changed. From the moment she was left beside her mother's lifeless body, she had believed hope was gone. But now she had Evan, a human who had chosen her, who had refused to let her die alone. And for Evan, the world had changed too. In protecting a fragile alien child, he had found a kind of courage and compassion that no battlefield could ever teach. Together, they were proof that even in the darkest war, choices could create light, and sometimes, that light was enough to save a life. Mara stirred again, small fingers curling around Evan's hand. He squeezed gently, silently promising her that the light would never fade, because he would never leave her. Not now. Not ever. Years passed, but Mara never forgot. She grew taller, stronger, her blue skin glowing faintly in the sunlight. Her silver hair, once tangled and dusty, now fell neatly around her shoulders. She learned the languages of both her people and Evan's. She learned songs of her lost home, stories of the stars, and the whispers of trees she would never see again. And yet, through it all, one thing remained the same. She remembered the human who had saved her. Evan had left the battlefield behind. The war continued elsewhere, with its battles and losses, but he stayed near Mara. He watched over her as she grew, guiding her, teaching her, protecting her. Together, they built a life in a small settlement where both humans and aliens slowly began to trust each other. Mara laughed sometimes now, a sound bright and warm, a contrast to the silence she had sat in beside her mother's body. She asked questions often, about everything. About the war, about humans, about life and loss. And every time, Evan answered patiently. He told her about courage, about kindness, about the strange strength of choosing to protect someone when no one expected it. He told her that real power was not in weapons or victory, but in love, trust, and sacrifice. Mara grew up knowing both grief and hope. She remembered the valley of ashes, the lifeless body of her mother, and the fear that had once paralyzed her. But she also remembered Ivan's arms, the warmth of his hands, and the promise he had made without anyone ordering him to do, so that people began to talk about them quietly. Stories spread of the human who had stopped in a war to protect a child of another species. They spoke of Mara, the alien girl who survived when everyone said she couldn't. They spoke of the bond between them, a bond that defied orders, rules, and fear. And those who heard the story felt something shift inside them. Something small like hope. Something big like faith in humanity. Mara often sat with Evan beneath the silver-leaved trees that had been planted in the settlement. She would hold the pendant her mother had given her, tracing it with her fingers, and he would sit beside her, quietly. Sometimes they did not speak at all. Words were unnecessary. The bond between them said everything that needed saying. One day Mara asked, "Why did you help me, Evan?" He looked at her, her eyes shining, reflecting both her mother's love and her own resilient spirit. "Because humanity isn't proven by how well we fight," he said softly. "It's proven by who we refuse to leave behind." Mara smiled. A small, bright smile that carried all the gratitude, love, and trust she had learned to feel again. She pressed her hand against his, holding on, feeling the truth of his words, and she understood. She understood that hope could survive even the deepest sorrow, that kindness could bloom in the darkest moments, and that one person's choice could change the course of a life. The valley of ashes, the war, her mother's loss, all of it remained in her memory. But it no longer defined her. What defined her was the human who had refused to leave her behind. The human who had chosen her. In the years to come, Mara would become a bridge between her people and humans, a living reminder that compassion could defeat fear and trust could overcome hate. And she would always carry Evan's example in her heart, a quiet but powerful proof that one act of courage, one decision to protect, could shine brighter than the darkest war. Mara had survived. She had hope, and the human who had saved her had taught the world, silently, that humanity was not measured in weapons or battles, but in the strength to protect life, even when no one commanded it. And together, they proved that hope, once found, could live forever.